Shut up! Don't defy me, you jobless hag!
It's my husband Herbie, his face beet red, screaming at me. Just like Herbie says, I don't work. Because I'm caring for Shirley, who has difficulty walking, at the behest of none other than Herbie himself. Who do you think is the reason I'm jobless? It was Herbie who asked me to quit my job 10 years ago. Since then, I've been helping Shirley, and yet, this is how he speaks to me. Thankfully, Shirley and I get along well, and there are no issues like harassment or mother-in-law problems. However, I'm not a professional caregiver, so looking after Shirley has been quite challenging. Still, I've continued to support Shirley because she treats me like her own daughter, and because Herbie pleaded with me to do so. Forgetting all this, Herbie slams the table with a triumphant look. There's a completed divorce application on the table, and I feel my face turning red with anger. I'm dating a president's daughter. Got her pregnant, so I'm going to remarry her. Underneath the divorce application, there's a photo. A beautiful woman with bright hair, a young and spirited smile. Seeing the photo of the woman Herbie introduces as the president's daughter, I barely hold back my laughter. It's not just familiar, this woman is. I'm Annabelle, and I'm 35 this year, with Herbie, 2 years my senior. Herbie and I met through the manager of the bakery where I worked 10 years ago. He was a businessman from the headquarters, and after noticing me during an inspection, we were quickly arranged to meet and married swiftly after. His mom had been slightly disabled in a traffic accident in the past, but when I went to greet her at their home, she went out of her way to welcome me in a wheelchair, which I deeply appreciated. Seeing how I reacted, my mother-in-law, Shirley, smiled warmly at me and happily agreed to our marriage. Considering Shirley's disability, we decided to set up our new home close to his parents' house. However, an accident occurred shortly after we got married, even before we had settled on a new home. Shirley fell with her wheelchair. Fortunately, her life wasn't in danger, but her mobility worsened. Before, Shirley could move from her wheelchair to a chair or bed with a cane or handrails. But now she couldn't even get on by herself due to injuring her back in the fall. With the increased disability, we could rely more on helpers, but that wasn't a complete solution. Helpers aren't free, nor are they available round the clock. As a result, there were times when Shirley was left alone, especially during the night when visibility worsened. Shirley seemed resigned to moving to a care facility, but Herbie objected. He promised to work harder and earn more, pleading with me to care for her. By that time, both of my parents had passed away. Not that it was the reason, but with no caregiving needed for my own parents in the future, I decided to take on Shirley's caregiving. Of course, there were many things I couldn't do as an amateur, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't match a professional. But I agreed to Herbie's proposal, thinking I could still be of help to kind Shirley. The hard life of living with and caring for my mother-in-law right after getting married turned out to be simpler than I imagined. Shirley was accustomed to her disability and was good at communicating her needs to Herbie and the helpers. Thanks to her, I knew what Shirley wanted and how I could assist. Moreover, Shirley never had an attitude of, "Because I'm your mother-in-law, you should take care of me." She was always grateful. While Shirley and I had no issues, the relationship between Herbie and me gradually cooled. The plan had been for both of us to work, but me becoming the breadwinner and supporting a disabled Shirley and a wife who had left her job became a significant pressure. This stress led Herbie to gradually direct his frustrations at us. If I criticized Herbie for coming home late without notice,
"Don't meddle in work matters, you jobless person,"
he would snap. And if I contacted Herbie for not coming home past dinner time, he'd casually mention he was on a business trip. If I protested,
"Don't complain when you're being supported,"
he would dismiss me. Every time Herbie treated me as jobless, I would forcefully remind him whose wish it was that I quit my job. He would have no reply to that. To avoid meeting me, Herbie started to dread coming home. He would deliberately return only when I was out shopping, for just a short while. He'd rush to bathe, eat all the prepared food in the fridge, and then flee. All his laundry would end up in the basket for me to wash, but one day, I noticed a change in Herbie's clothing. He started wearing branded dress shirts, and fashionable ties and tie pins began to appear in his room. Familiar suits were pushed to the back of the closet, replaced with what seemed to be newly purchased bespoke ones or clearly higher-grade attire. Herbie's income hadn't changed, nor was he recklessly shopping with credit cards. But it was clear the purchases were beyond his means, and sure enough, a check of our savings showed they had been dipped into.
Hey, why did you use the savings without telling me? How much did this suit cost? What are you thinking suddenly spending like this?
I was about to say he should think more when Herbie shouted back at me, cutting me off.
Shut up! Shut up!
Lately, this was always Herbie's response. He wouldn't listen to me, forcibly interrupting.
I'm sick of it. Every day it's be patient this, save money that. The house is so dreary. Who do you think earns the money here? Again with this? It was you who wanted me to quit my job to take care of your parent.
We end up repeating the same arguments because Herbie always reacts the same way. I had suggested that Shirley use day services so I could work part-time, given how tough our financial situation had become. So, I tried not to waste money, planning meals bi-weekly, shopping in bulk, and freezing prepared foods and sale items.
It's like you're saying I can't even feed my wife and parent.
Herbie yelled, taking it as a blow to his pride. But Herbie would suddenly return, eat everything, and thus even the grocery expenses piled up. If only he would eat at home every day, there wouldn't be a need for sudden shopping trips. He didn't want me working, nor would he help me save. Yet, Herbie always talked as if he was the victim. Annabelle, could I have a moment? When our arguments heated up, Shirley would always interject with her calm voice. It would snap us back to reality. When I went to Shirley, leaving Herbie behind, it was usually for no significant reason. It was clear Shirley was trying to be considerate. "I'm sorry, I can't even do this by myself," she'd say with an apologetic smile, asking me to change her socks because she was cold. The one good thing about marrying Herbie was being able to call Shirley Mom. One night, I was about to put Herbie's shirt in the wash when I noticed a stain on the chest. Wondering if it needed stain remover, I realized it was a light-colored lipstick. Herbie's train isn't that crowded, and he didn't smell of alcohol today, so it likely wasn't from a hostess club. After a moment's thought, I discreetly hid the shirt and casually tossed a new one into the washer. While Herbie showered, I quickly checked his wallet. True to his careless nature, Herbie had crammed receipts inside. Finding receipts from hotels and women's brands among them, I sighed and quietly pulled them out. Cheating, I was certain. I had a feeling. Despite our constant fighting, Herbie's recent behavior had been undeniably strange. Anger welled up within me, turning into a fierce surge of rage. My lips trembled as I heard a creaking noise.
Shirley!
Turning, I saw Shirley had come over in her wheelchair. She seemed to grasp the situation, noticing the clenched receipts and my vacant expression. "Is Herbie still in the bath?" she asked, looking toward the bathroom, and I nodded silently. "Annabelle, let's gather solid evidence. Go to a detective office I know tomorrow."
But...
I was surprised by Shirley's words when she gently embraced me. "It's okay, I'm on my daughter's side." The next day, after sending Herbie off, I went straight to the detective agency Shirley had recommended. I handed over the shirt and receipts and waited for the results. Not knowing anything about the other party, I was prepared for it to take some time, but the detective Shirley introduced seemed very capable. Within about a week, they provided me with a report and a mass of evidence photos. The woman's name was Trisha. She was 34 years old, seemingly an office worker at one of Herbie's clients. She appeared in the distant shots wearing the same color lipstick that was on Herbie's shirt. I decided to confront Herbie that very day. When he came back from work, I showed him the lipstick-stained shirt and photos.
Can you explain this?
I already knew everything from the investigation, but I was curious to see what excuse Herbie would make. What excuse would a man who enjoyed himself without helping with housework or caring for his parent, leaving it all to his wife, come up with? Herbie glanced at the shirt and the photos, then snorted with a laugh. I had expected some panic, but he didn't show the slightest sign of it. "Ah, you caught me." He tossed the photos aside and stretched grandly. Shirley and I were taken aback by his unexpected reaction.
"I know everything."
Herbie laughed at me as if mocking my words. "Liar, you don't know anything about Trisha. She's a great woman, not a dreary hag like you."
"Herbie! How dare you speak to your wife like that?"
Shirley shouted, gripping the armrest of her wheelchair, but Herbie didn't seem to care. "Shirley, you don't have to side with Annabelle. I'm marrying Trisha, so let's kick her out quickly."
"Huh?"
A surprised exclamation escaped me. Watching Herbie speak while digging in his ear, I couldn't believe it, and he noticed, giving me a thin smile. "Trisha, she's pregnant. My kid." It felt like being struck by lightning. We didn't have children. The possibility faded as fights increased, and we stopped being intimate. But it wasn't that I didn't want children. I thought Herbie felt the same, but I never imagined he'd go and make a child elsewhere.
"Don't worry, Shirley. Trisha's some president's daughter. Marrying into money. Now we can easily cover Shirley's caregiving costs." "You're shameless. I can't believe this."
Shirley trembled with anger at Herbie's uproarious laughter, which stopped abruptly when he saw her. Then he sighed dramatically. "Ah, spending too much time with Annabelle has made you stupid, Shirley." He smirked, looking at us disdainfully before declaring, "Well, that's it then. I'll divorce this one and cut ties with Shirley. This jobless hag is just a nuisance in my life." I slammed the table in fury.
"How can you say such things? This treatment is outrageous."
His words were cruelly dismissive, not just towards his own mother but also towards me, who had cared for Shirley for 10 years. Despite our good relationship, caring for Shirley, who had mobility issues, was never easy. Yet, because she was Herbie's mom, I had dedicated the prime years of my womanhood to her care. But my anger seemed neither painful nor itchy to Herbie. Caring for parents is the wife's job, right?" Herbie said this as if it were the most natural thing, showing no appreciation for my past efforts. Shirley grasped my hand as if to protect me, shocked.
"Annabelle has really taken good care of me, as if I were her own. And you betray her so easily. Aren't you ashamed?"
His own mother scolds him. Herbie looked at his mother as if she were something vile.
"Shut up. I was the one earning the money for that care. I'll leave that useless hag behind when I marry Trisha. Enough already."
I retorted sharply to Herbie, whose demeanor seemed entirely changed. Gripping Shirley's trembling hand, I glared at him.
"I'm divorcing. But I'm taking Shirley with me,"
I stated firmly, to which Shirley showed surprise and confusion. Despite my hesitation over whether it was right for me, who wasn't her biological daughter, to say such a thing, leaving Shirley with this man was not an option for me.
"If Shirley agrees, let's live together."
For me, who lost my parents early, she gave the warmth of a mom. I couldn't bear to leave such a person in this helpless situation.
"Annabelle, is that okay?"
Shirley teared up as she asked, and I smiled back.
"Of course."
Well, it'll be a relief to get rid of you. Hurry up and leave, this house is mine." Herbie mocked us, But without hesitation, Shirley and I started packing our belongings. Herbie, showing no sign of remorse, grabbed a beer from the fridge and gulped it down. The TV, likely turned on by Herbie, emitted sounds of laughter. Packing only what was necessary, Shirley and I left the house. Despite our resolute departure, that man didn't even bother to see us off. Eventually, we divorced without issue. Apparently, Herbie was indeed going to remarry the president's daughter. He readily paid the compensation for the divorce due to adultery. Certainly, he couldn't have had such savings, so it was likely funded by his partner. We had to leave the house, inherited by Herbie when his father-in-law passed away, but with the adultery compensation, we had a decent amount of money. I immediately rented a barrier-free apartment, and Shirley and I began living together. Since we left with only valuables, I returned to the in-laws' house several times to sort through our things. I chose weekdays during the day to avoid meeting Herbie. Still, it seemed he disliked my returning to the house in his absence, as our belongings began to be carelessly placed in cardboard boxes at the entrance. A month after moving with Shirley, I received a call from Herbie during dinner. Today was supposed to be Herbie and his affair partner's wedding day. We both trembled with anger at the sheer audacity when he contacted Shirley immediately after we left, asking her to attend the wedding. Of course, Shirley declined and blocked his calls. I wanted to do the same, but I was afraid of what Herbie might do if he couldn't contact me. Ignoring him only led to another call ringing through. What was he thinking, calling his ex-spouse during his wedding with another woman after such a separation? Glancing at Shirley, I reluctantly answered, only to hear Herbie's panicked voice.
Annabelle, help me!
He screamed as if in agony, prompting me, albeit reluctantly, to ask, "What?" I didn't want to speak with him for even a second more. His voice in my ear was nothing but discomfort, but he seemed too desperate to care about my feelings. Unfazed by my cold tone, Herbie blurted out,
That girl, Trisha, she's a gangster's daughter."
His voice echoed as if he was calling from a bathroom at the wedding venue, trembling yet audible. I responded quietly, "I see." In fact, I was aware that Herbie's new partner was the daughter of a gangster. The day after we left, I had requested an investigation, which led to an urgent call for me to come in. Upon arrival, the detective, with a stern face, informed me of additional findings.
Your husband's affair partner is indeed a president's daughter, but her parents are involved in organized crime. They're gangsters, though not high-ranking.
Hiding my shock, I was advised of the potential danger of getting involved. The detective sipped his coffee, trying to calm down.
Since Shirley was with us the other day, I decided to inform you separately. For now, there's no indication they consider us a threat. The generous divorce compensation suggests they're not too interested in you.
The detective sighed deeply.
Unfortunately, if you've received divorce compensation from your husband, it might be wise not to pursue anything from his affair partner.
I quietly nodded to those words. The idea of organized crime seemed like something out of a drama, but the chill that went down my spine reminded me they were very real. Unlike in dramas, if they weren't immediately aggressive, I wanted nothing more than to avoid any further provocation. After all, who Herbie's affair partner was, or where she was from, didn't matter to me in the slightest. If it meant I couldn't get compensation from the divorce due to her, so be it. What I couldn't forgive was how Herbie discarded me and Shirley like we were nothing more than trash.
"Please, Annabelle, take me in."
"I refuse." I coldly rejected Herbie's plea. From his disjointed story, it seemed the wedding was crowded with guests who clearly weren't just ordinary people. Herbie's friends, who had been invited without knowing any better, were terrified and left immediately. With no attendance from Shirley or her side, it seemed to have turned into a wedding attended only by the bride's connections and friends.
"You're struggling without an income, right?" I'll pay for living expenses. So please.
Herbie pleaded with me in a tearful voice. I had no obligation to help this man, but I wondered about Shirley. Turning to her, I found her shaking her head slightly.
I have no son,
Shirley declared. Nodding in agreement, I firmly rebuffed Herbie's request again. That's fine. We don't want anything to do with you, who married such a dangerous person. Besides, don't worry about our finances. Both Shirley and I have our own incomes. I could hear Herbie swallow his breath over the phone. Unknown to Herbie, both Shirley and I had stable incomes. Despite her mobility issues, Shirley had been working from home in preparation for possibly needing to move into a facility one day. Because she wasn't making much, barely surpassing $100 a month, Shirley didn't tell Herbie. Just when she finally started earning a few dollars, Herbie and I were not on good terms, and his wasteful spending had begun. Concerned that revealing her income might loosen Herbie's already slack purse strings further, she chose not to tell him. Shirley secretly gave me money to help with expenses, suggesting I might find something I could do from home as well. Now, together, we were making a decent income.
Come on, please.
Desperate, Herbie tried to cling to any hope of assistance, to which I casually let slip.
Oh, by the way, you and Trisha started dating about 4 months ago, right?
Looks like the baby's about 6 months along now. Whose child could it be, I wonder? A loud thud sounded in my ear. Perhaps Herbie had dropped his phone, for I could hear him muttering from a distance.
What? Trisha's baby isn't mine? Then whose is it?
Today's smartphones are impressively capable of picking up such murmurs. As I recalled the additional investigative report I had received, I was about to turn off the phone when an unfamiliar man's voice reached me. Hey, Herbie, the groom's been gone too long, everyone's waiting. Another rough voice chimed in. As I hurried to hang up, intrigued or perhaps concerned, Shirley stopped me, listening intently.
Oh, Horace!
Herbie's trembling voice was followed by chuckling, as if someone was laughing along. It seemed the other voice belonged to the affair partner's father.
You didn't know we were gangsters?
Whether Herbie had picked up the phone again or someone else had, wasn't clear. Herbie's squeak was crisp.
Don't worry, we won't eat you. Thanks for taking an uncle's kid along with you.
A slapping sound, as if someone was being hit on the back, accompanied the man's hearty laughter. Herbie's confused voice followed.
Oh, Uncle! You don't know? The kid in her stomach is Uncle's from our gang.
The affair partner's father laughed, not a bit ashamed. Shirley and I exchanged looks. What a mess Herbie had gotten himself into. Though we knew the child wasn't Herbie's, the idea it belonged to a gangster was beyond imagination.
You're not thinking of divorcing after touching my daughter, right, Herbie?
The previous good mood vanished as the affair partner's father threatened in a menacing tone. The real intensity of the situation made even me fearful over the phone, and Herbie, facing it directly, must have been trembling with a pale face. When I looked at Shirley, wondering if she was worried, she unhesitatingly turned off the power.
Is that okay?
I asked in surprise, to which Shirley shook her head lightly.
It's fine, it's his own doing. Besides, do you really think gangs like something out of a drama exist? Come on, Annabelle, let's have dinner.
It's possible that Herbie, trying to worm his way into our home, was putting on an act. Smiling at Shirley's encouragement, we reached for the slightly cooled dishes. Several months later, our apartment door was banged on loudly. The doorbell rang repeatedly without pause. I stopped wiping Shirley's feet and exchanged a look with her.
What could it be? I'll check. Whatever happens, Annabelle, don't open all the locks, just in case.
Supported by Shirley's hand on my back, I cautiously opened the door with the chain still on.
Annabelle!
There stood Herbie, significantly thinner, his eyes hollow with terror. I recoiled in surprise, thankful for the chain.
Help me, Annabelle, please.
His wretched state made me hasten to close the door. But Herbie caught the edge of the door, preventing it from closing. The door didn't break, but it opened easily, and I bit my lip hard.
Shirley, Annabelle, please. Look at me, take me in.
Herbie claimed he had decided to divorce after finding out the child in Trish's womb wasn't his, right after the wedding.
I wasn't told her parents were gangsters. She said she was a president's daughter. And the child isn't mine, it's a joke. I want a divorce.
But when he slammed the divorce papers down, Trisha barely glanced at them before returning to her phone. She just lounged on the sofa in her home clothes, tossing her legs about.
Did Annabelle tell you?
While she nonchalantly stroked her barely noticeable belly and tapped on her phone, Herbie, expecting her to be flustered, found himself the one rattled.
I accused her of marrying me thinking I had fathered a child. But then Trisha's father walked in.
Unperturbed by Herbie's fear, the father immediately tore up the divorce papers and threatened that if he really wanted a divorce, he'd have to come up with $100,000.
$100,000.
I was shocked by the absurd amount. Herbie, a mere employee, couldn't possibly come up with such a sum. Of course, Herbie protested, but to no avail.
Trisha wasn't in love with me or anything. She just needed a father for her child.
Herbie started to cry, but I felt no sympathy. I was surprised by the amount, but so what? Once I knew she was involved with gangsters. I figured a peaceful marriage was unlikely. It's just too odd. There's no benefit for Trisha to cover a divorce settlement just to marry Herbie. It's logical to suspect something else was at play. I don't know their motive, but could he really pay $100,000 and get a divorce? But it had nothing to do with Shirley and me. Or did he really think he could come to his ex-wife and mother he abandoned and ask us to pay instead? I glared at Herbie. Unaware of my contempt, he pleaded desperately.
They're making sure I can't escape by driving me to and from work.
Herbie lied about an emergency business trip and fled for his life. He'd been visiting real estate agencies during breaks, looking for a barrier-free rental to find us.
Look, I'm not asking for the full $100,000, just a little to help pay. Otherwise,
he begged, rubbing his head on the floor.
So, if I pay $100K, you can get a divorce, right?
Shirley!
I turned around in surprise at Shirley's interjection, having been silently listening. As I attempted to stop her, thinking she might actually consider paying, Shirley smiled reassuringly and calmed me down.
That's right, with $100,000, I can get divorced from Trisha.
Herbie looked up at Shirley with a face muddled by tears and snot. But no compassion was found there.
Then you should work and pay for it yourself. It has nothing to do with us.
Shirley firmly rejected Herbie, leaving him in shock.
But, I'm in trouble.
Attempting to cling on, Herbie was briskly brushed off by Shirley with one hand.
I have no son. My only family is my daughter Annabelle.
Gently pushed aside, he seemed to have lost his spirit.
Come on, Annabelle, let's not bother with whoever that is and have some tea instead.
Is that okay?
I asked quietly, to which Shirley simply smiled as if it was nothing. Herbie would no longer be able to call Shirley Mom. Even if he did, there would never be a response again. It seemed he finally realized the extent of his actions. Staring blankly at us without even wiping his tears and snot. Please don't come here again. As I moved to close the door, heavy footsteps thundered. Looking to see who could make such a noise, I saw a man with a large scar on his face, grinning as he approached. I trembled behind the door, but the man smiled warmly at me. Sorry about our Herbie causing trouble. We'll be taking him back now. His cheerful voice contrasted starkly with his actions as he forcefully pulled Herbie up by the arm. The disconnect between his voice and actions left me feeling dizzy.
Why are you here, Horace?
Herbie's voice was faint. Accompanied by others who made sure he couldn't escape, they held him by the sides.
We got worried when you dilly-dallied in a residential area on an urgent business trip.
So, we came to pick you up. Horace prodded Herbie's back, still in shock from being rejected by his mother.
Well, we'll be leaving now.
Horace was always smiling, which was unnerving. Shirley and I repeatedly nodded. Turning away from Herbie being dragged off, I firmly closed the door. Turning the lock, I faced Shirley.
They really were gangsters.
It seems so.
Our hearts raced, unsettled. Holding each other's trembling hands, we took a deep breath. With Herbie having run away once, his treatment from them was bound to get harsher. Whatever their reasons for clinging to Herbie, we wanted no part of it. If they showed no interest in us, letting time pass and being forgotten was best. Soon after, Shirley and I changed our phone numbers and moved to a distant town. Reluctant to leave the newly contracted barrier-free rental, we couldn't stay knowing those people knew where we lived. Fortunately, we found another barrier-free apartment, and neither Herbie nor Horace has visited since. Following Shirley's suggestion, we underwent a formal adoption process. With the divorce from Herbie, Shirley and I were technically strangers. Becoming legally mother and daughter was a relief. Caring for Shirley is challenging, but for us, it's a minor issue. Shirley stopped her home-based job after moving, opting for daytime services, while I worked around these hours and also from home. Supporting our two-person household is tough. But thanks to Shirley's previous income, we're managing. We look forward to enjoying our lives together as mother and daughter.